Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another fantastic episode of the Dadpocalypse Now Show. I'm your host, Jason Gowan. Now, tonight, we have a very special guest. He doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. He is a legendary comedian, famous for his platinum-selling and Grammy-nominated stand-up comedy. And he has been seen in everything from the Blue Comedy Tour, his very own hilarious stand-up comedy specials. He's been on Last Man Standing, Dancing with the Stars, The Bill Engvall Show, and many, many more. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big Dadpocalypse Now show welcome to tonight's guest, Mr. Bill Engvall.
Hey.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
So, by the way, you just won the award for the greatest opening graphics for a podcast I've ever seen in my life.
Thanks. I shoot for the moon.
You reached it. Well, cheers to you. I'm having my IPA here, waiting on to jump into dad stories.
Me too. I went with the giant economy size today. I have twin 2-year-olds, so they.
Oh well, you deserved a big one then.
So, like at the end of the, they are hardcore into the terrible twos. So I needed to decompress. We've had a weird year and couple months now. What have you been up to with quarantine and COVID?
Yeah, this has been something that we have never. At least I think pretty much. I heard somebody say that the closest thing to this was the polio epidemic back in 1918 or something like that. It's been. Knock on wood, we've stayed well, and my wife and I, and nobody in our families had it yet. But it's been weird. What's been weird for me is to watch how people are dealing with this. And it's not a good future. It's like, I mean,
there's a whole lot of scary right now.
That you're right. And like, I will, and this, I'm sure everybody has talked about this, but one of the things that just always, what was the big run on toilet paper? There was, diarrhea is not one of the symptoms of COVID. Explosive bowel movements is not. There was nothing about toilet paper. Yet, some reason, that's what everybody's go-to is. I guess at the end of the world, at the real apocalypse, there'll be no toilet paper because they'll all want to take it with them.
Right, you could sell toilet paper for higher than you could Bitcoin at the time.
There was people stealing it out of your grocery cart if you turned your back. It's like, I'll buy you a roll of toilet paper. You don't have to steal mine.
Yeah, it was toilet paper apocalypse there for a little bit. Pretty crazy.
Well, I'm just praying and hoping that now that the vaccine's is getting out, that people will just calm down. My God, it's like. It just, as much as I love humanity, and we're not good on our own.
No,
we don't make good decisions.
Everybody was so concerned about their freedoms, and I was like, we've now seen what happens when you're stealing toilet paper from old ladies.
I have a dear friend who's a very intelligent man who will argue till the cows come home that this is all made up.
Still?
Yeah. He doesn't buy it. I'm like, I don't know what else to say to you, man.
Yeah. So what did you? I mean, obviously you travel quite a bit, right?
Yeah. Well, starting last February, my work just shut down. In fact, I've got my first show on February 27th, and I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know. Hey, Penny, thanks for that compliment. We got people watching there.
Yeah, people are watching.
That's awesome. Well, hello, Penny. I'm glad. I'm honored to be your favorite comedian. And so I've got 2 shows in Surprise, Arizona, at the Performing Arts Center there, and I pity that first audience. It's going to be a little rusty. I haven't been on stage in almost over a year now. Right.
Yeah. I mean, what's that like for you? Because I mean, how often do you travel? Typically.
I was. At the peak of my stand-up career, I was probably doing 80 to 100 shows a year. But now I'm down to about maybe 40 or 50. I've got a granddaughter now, and and I got to be honest with you, the one great thing out of this COVID thing is that my wife and I have discovered that we'll make it. We'll make it in retirement because we've been, because our whole lives have been, me going on the road, coming home, dropping off a check, and going back out. And we had to adjust because there was no work, and I'm proud to say that we figured it out, and that's a good thing to know.
So how did you pass your time? Like what did you do in that time?
Well, actually, an interesting story is that I've actually gone back to college.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't. My first foray into college was not good. Actually, it was great, just not for grades.
I have a very similar experience there.
Yeah, because see, when I was in high school, I was a parent's dream. I didn't smoke, drink. I always made my curfew. I went off to college, and they said, "Hey, they don't even take roll here," and I'm like, "Wow, okay." And I discovered ladies and beer, and studies went right out the window. So anyway, so I got back into college. I'm doing online at Grand Canyon University. I'm getting a Bachelor of Arts in Christian Studies, and that was really helpful for me during this because I could focus on that. I could focus on my college, and then it's interesting how I didn't realize I'm doing really well in it. I've been on the dean's list the whole time, and to give you a kind of a perspective, my grade point average when I went to college the first time was in 1975, and my grade point average was 0.76.
So you didn't go to a lot of class.
No. And now, I've got like a 3.95, and I've discovered that it's really easy to make good grades when you're not drunk and horny half the time. It's like,
yeah, I think there's a little bit of a correlation there.
Yeah, I think so too. Hey, Randy, how are you doing? I would love for you to see a show live too.
Yeah, people seem excited that you're here. So now tell us about your family. I know a little bit, but you tell us, a little bit about.
Yeah, I've got my wife, Gail, and I've been married for 38 years. We have two beautiful children that are full grown now. And our daughter has a daughter now. And it's happiness that I never knew before. That being a dad was the greatest job I was ever given. One of the most frustrating jobs sometimes. But I give a lot of 99% of the credit to my wife because she, I was the party dad. When Dad came home, I'd been on the road, so Dad was like, Dad lets us do anything, and she had to kind of pull me aside and say, that's not the way we've been doing it, and. But the kids turned out great. Knock on wood, we've never had any what I call fatal flaws. That nobody ever did anything so stupid they couldn't recover from it. And they're both well-adjusted kids. They're both very happy. I'm at that point where things are so good. My job is just to stay out of the way. It's like.
So how do your kids handle now, or how did they handle growing up with you, being such an iconic comedian?
That's a great question. Because I often worried about that because, listen, when I was early on, I missed my kids walking and talking for the first time. And, because I was on the road. And it's funny, a few years back, I apologized to each of them for being gone so much. And they both said the same thing. They said, Dad, it was your job. And, as Gail, my wife, would tell you that she told me as many times that, when I would get down about being gone, and she said, look, when you're here, though, you're here 24/7. A lot of dads go to work and they don't see their kids in the morning. They don't see their kids at night because they work, 9 to 9. Nobody works 9 to 5 anymore.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I was able to, Gail was really good about that, about keeping me grounded. And the only issue that not even issue, but a lot of times people ask, what did my kids think about me doing jokes about them? And my daughter was the only one who had one complaint, and I got it. I understood it. I used to do a joke about, when the how to wash tag on a pair of girls' underwear is bigger than the underwear itself. They don't need to be wearing them. And one day she came home from high school and said, okay, enough. And I said, what? She said, I was walking down the hall and some kid I didn't even know came up to me and said, hey, I heard your dad talking about your underwear. And I was like, okay, I got it.
Yeah, I can see where she would probably want to draw the line in the sand.
Yeah. But my son always, he didn't care. But
now, yeah, that's so on the flip side of that, what was it like for you being a parent in entertainment?
It was horrible. It was being gone. It was being away from my family. To tell you the God honest truth, there was a period of my life that I was hitting the sauce pretty good, and it was only because I was trying to kill the pain of being away from them for so long. And thank goodness I got hold of that. But it was hard. It was really hard because I think a lot of things what people don't understand about being a comedian or any kind of singer or whatever is for 90 minutes I got 2,000 new best friends, and then they all go home, and I'm back at the Holiday Inn, not knowing anybody, and that's hard to wrap your brain around that. That people love.
I can't imagine that. I like you're the star of the show, the spotlight's on you, and then you go back and not only are you in the room alone, but you have a wife and kids.
Yeah. And, by the time the show's over, even when I'd call home, the kids were already in bed, and so I don't know that people understand how hard it is because you love your kids. I love my children, and I wanted to be there for all the things in soccer games and football games and stuff. But, it's kind of dancing with the devil. We got a great life now, and everybody's happy, thank God, and adjusted. But, at any given point, it could have turned south.
And I mean, it sounds like, you never had any, major blowups, the police, didn't have the FBI at your house.
No. The only time the cops have ever come to the Engvall house was when my daughter was in junior high, and her friends were trying to call this boy, and the prefix to his number was 991, and they kept dialing 911 and then squealing. Oh. So I came out, I didn't know what was going on. I was at the house. I walked out to my truck, and I'm face to face with a cop with a gun pointed at me. And, and he said, who's in the house? I said, my wife, my daughter, and her friends. And he said, well, we've been getting 911. I mean, they kept me outside. It was like, and when they finally figured out what it was, I actually turned to the police officer. I said, do me a favor. I said, go up there and scare the living hell out of those kids.
Well, I mean, what did you think when you come out and the guy's got his gun?
What do you think? You walk out, there's a cop with a gun in your face. Listen, first thing I did was I said, what? I go, I'm good. I'm clean. What do you need me to do? And, he said, step over here. And I was like, done, sir. I was yes, sir, no, sir. It was like.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, you kind of touched on it a little bit there, but when you were home, who was the disciplinarian in the house?
My wife was. Because it was, there were times I had to. One of the things that my wife and I did that I highly recommend to every parent or parent that's going to be, you and your wife have to be on the same team, even if you don't agree with it, because kids will find a way to work you against each other. Like I remember my son coming to me and saying, hey, can I go down to Bobby's house? And I go, my first response was, what'd your mom say? And he goes, well, she said no. I go, well, then no, and because as wonderful as children are, they will test every bit of your patience, every bit of your sanity. And they're going to try to find things to get done their way. And if your wife or her husband and you are on the same page, then at least you've got that. And that, in fact, both kids have talked about that to us at one point or another.
Well, that's, do they now, looking back for them, do they, well, how do they feel about, their growing up, with having you as a dad?
I'm sure it was difficult. Maybe not as much as I made it. I don't think that my daughter was always, she was our firstborn. I always called her our little hippie. She just kind of was whatever, and always a self-starter, and never any issues. I don't think my son was quite ready for the spotlight. That it took him a while to adjust to it. That there's not always advantages to being Bill Engvall's son. The fact that your teachers look at you a little more strictly, you're under a microscope more than most kids. And at one point, it was I'm so happy that he figured it out, because there's nothing you can do. People don't even realize they're doing it. I think when he realized it was a good thing was when he got pulled over for speeding, and the cop said, "Oh, Engvall, like the comedian." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Just slow it down." So you knew there was some advantages.
Well, it's not the most common of last names.
Now, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories from my kids. My daughter was in the mall. This was before COVID. And she was going to one of those sunglass huts, like where you buy the little kiosk where the sunglasses are. Mm-hmm. And she found a pair of sunglasses, and she gave the guy her credit card, and he looked at it. And he goes, Engvall. He goes, "Like that comedian?" And she goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Never liked that guy." So I think I always say God gives you. I call that God's little humbler. They go, "Oh, yeah, you're not quite as big as you think you are." He never. I can't believe the kid didn't go, "Oh, is that your dad?" or whatever. He just like, never found him funny.
Can't win them all, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
So now, what was the biggest difference, between raising your son versus raising your daughter?
Our daughter was born an adult. Emily was born 35 years old. I mean, and I don't know if that was because she was raised around adults, like I was still working the clubs. And so, a lot of times Gail and Emily would come with me, and,
oh, really?
When I was on stage, the wait staff would be playing with Emily in the back room. She was little. And then Travis came along, and Travis was just a normal boy. But we were so used to Emily being 35 years old that we were like, what is wrong with this boy? His energy, he doesn't stop. It's just, and he was just a normal boy, but we were caught off guard. And I think probably, people will say that daughters are harder to raise. I think I would go with sons, only because you walk a real fine line of being their buddy and being their dad. And that's hard. That's a hard line to walk, because it's easy to slip into being their buddy. In fact, that's my biggest gripe about parents today is I think they're more concerned about being their kid's best friend than they are about being their parent. My kids are grown, so now I get to be their best friend. I'm there if they want my advice. If not, I'm good with that too. But when they're young, you really got to watch that, because because there's going to be times when you're his best friend, and then there's times you're going to have to be his dad, and he doesn't understand that. If he's got to be punished or something, like my friend doesn't punish me, but your dad does. So, I think at least from my vantage point, boys were harder.
I'm kind of we're in that space right now. We have a 5-year-old and two twin, like I said, two twins, all boys. So with the 5-year-old in particular, I'm kind of in a place where I'm trying to figure out that ground, and exactly, because like when he was really, really young, simple commands would stop most of the bad behavior. But now he's a lot more mischievous. And he's a little bit more conniving. I don't trust him. I am sure that the FBI will be here when he's older. So I have to try and my wife and I have talked about it, and I've said, at some point we've got to make sure that we raise a decent adult, because if if COVID has taught us anything, is that there's a whole lot of assholes out there.
Yeah.
So and I want to make sure that we do the right job and make them all be upstanding, I mean, at least halfway decent human beings.
Right. And I think a lot of that comes from, you just have to, you have to do what your gut tells you. Listen, all these books that are written about how to be the perfect parent, and I'm my kids, there's the thing I learned is there's no manual. There's nothing you can, there's some basic stuff, but I could figure that out, but I honestly believe that the strongest thing a parents can do is you got to be on the same page. And my wife and I tried our best not to argue in front of each other, in front of the kids. We made sure we kissed and held hands and stuff, but we tried our best not to argue because the kids didn't see that as a weakness.
I think that's really important because kids see everything, and that's one thing that I don't think gets discussed a whole lot is that they really do watch everything you do. And I know from personal experience, things I saw in the home with my parents have carried over now into my marriage and into my parenting. And I know that every move we make, 6 little eyes are watching us,
and 6 little ears too, because they hear everything. I had my son, and I am not proud of this moment at all, but I was driving and a person cut me off, and I used the mother blank word. And from the back seat, I heard it repeated about 30 times by a 2-year-old. And I was like, okay, you can't tell mama where we learned that word.
We had an incident like that this week. Some kids across the street from us were throwing snowballs. They hit the neighbor's window, and my son looks at me and my wife, and he looks at me with the most straightest face, and he says, "Look, bitches be crazy." So,
okay, see, that's the hardest thing is when they throw something like that at you. You've got to maintain, like, hey, now we don't need. But inside, you're dying. You're like, it's like the funniest thing ever.
How do you do it? Like, do you have any pointers? Like, how do you keep this?
Let me tell you something. I've bit the inside of my cheek so many times because they pick stuff up at school. They daycare. I mean, even at daycare. Oh, it's like you gotta. I remember one time we were sitting at dinner, and Travis was little, and we were having dinner, and somebody had the salt. And he said, "Why don't you hand that little bastard over here?" And I literally had to get up from the table and walk into the other room and get my stuff together before I could come back in and go, "Hey, dude, we don't need to be talking like that."
Now, did your kids inherit your funny gene?
Yeah, I think my daughter's got a real dry sense of humor. I honestly don't think I'm my kid's type of comedian.
Really?
Yeah, they're more into because I'm older now too, but
right.
And they were also the brunt of a lot of jokes. So, but they're more into like Jim Gaffigan. They've all got their favorites, and I don't think that Bill's name is in that top 5 at all. I think they respect what I do, but I'm not their type of comedian.
Do you hold any kind of grudge with Gaffigan because they're still in this?
No, I like Jimmy's a good man. I like Jim.
Oh yeah,
at least it's a good comedian. You know what I'm saying? It'd be one thing if it was just some cruddy comedian, but it's Gaffigan, so I go, all right, he's funny. So
yeah, he's a fantastic talent. So was there anything that really kind of floored you when you found out you were expecting for the first time when your daughter was you find out your daughter's on your way?
Yeah, I discovered that I was not ready. I was into it, but I was scared to death because it's another human being. It's not a dog. It's not nothing against dogs, but it's a human being. And I remember the first day after our daughter was born and my wife was going to finally go back to work. Emily was probably under a year, I think. She could sit in a high chair. And Gail said, "Are you going to be okay with this?" And I said, "Yeah, it's not that big a deal." So it got to be lunchtime, and I set Emily in her high chair, and she started doing this, just lolling back and forth. I'm like, "What? And I'm like, "Hey, honey, wake up! It's lunchtime." Da-da. I can't get her to snap out of it. I thought she was dying. So I literally grabbed her out of her car seat, out of the high chair, got in the car, didn't put her in her car seat, held her, and drove to the pediatrician. And as soon as I walked in the front door, Emily perked up and was looking around and laughing. And I said, "I swear to God, she was lethargic. I couldn't wake her up. Her eyes were rolled back in her head." And the nurse said, "Has she had her nap today?" And I was like, "Okay, let's not tell my wife about this one, shall we?"
Oh, so she just kind of passed out.
Yeah, she was fine. She was tired. She didn't have her nap. But I thought the sky was falling. And but I tell you, the other thing was I wasn't ready for how much you can love something. Right. I love my wife and would give my life for her. But my kids and my granddaughter, there's no, I wasn't ready for that kind of love. Just that unconditional, you're my dad, you're my mom, it's like my favorite thing in the world was when it was nap. My saddest day of my life was when my kids stopped taking naps, because I would literally just get him, lay on the bed with them, and we'd all take a nap.
Oh, it's nobody, like, you can hear a parent say it. You can hear him say those words, but until it physically happens to you, you really don't. There's the scope of it is just, it's unfathomable.
I remember when Emily was being born, we had read this thing, because I traveled all the time, and I read this article about this guy had done is he had, now this shows you my age, he had a Walkman, and he would record something to his baby who was still in utero, and his wife would put the headphones on her belly at night and play this with him. So we thought, what the heck, we'll try it. So we didn't know what Emily was. We didn't know if she was a boy or a girl. In fact, the doctors kept telling us it was a boy. And so we didn't know what to name her. So I called her Emster. And I'd put something like, "Hey, Emster, it's Dad. I'm gone right now, but I'm thinking about you and I can't wait to see you." Dude, as God is my witness, the day she was born, when they lifted her out and they handed her to me, and I said, "Hey, Emster, it's Daddy," she looked straight at me, turned her head and looked straight at me. And I thought, I'm done. I'm done.
What went through your head in that moment?
Well, just sheer, like, oh my gosh, she knows who I am. It's like, how could that be? And it's because we'd never met.
Right.
She was
there's not a subway that goes down into the.
She was just the only time I'd ever seen her was on the ultrasound, but it is, being a parent is one of the coolest things you'll ever do. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but you're going to find yourself lying in bed just smiling, because even when they're driving you crazy and they've pushed you to as far as you can go, you get them to bed finally, and you lay down and you just kind of smile and go, it's kind of like that old Cat Stevens song, the cat's in the cradle, that boy's just like me.
I'm in a lot of trouble if mine end up that way.
No, if they end up like you, they'll be just fine.
Oh, well, thank you. So now, what for you was the biggest difference in the way, you raised your children versus the way your parents raised you?
My parents were from that generation that there wasn't a lot of outwardly visible love. I knew they loved us, but they rarely said it. And Gail's family was the same way. And one of the things that Gail and I said was, we are going to tell our kids we love them every day. That at one point or another, they will be told that they're loved. And I also think that, my dad was a great man. He's passed on now, but he was kind of like, I was like Travis in that sense that my dad was a doctor, and we lived in a very small town, so everybody knew us. And it was hard to be his son because, my dad was one of those guys. I don't know if I've got one here. Let me see. I don't think I do. My dad could take a block of wood and carve a bird out of it that you would buy at a store.
Really?
He was very artistic, and plus he was the town doctor, so how many babies he helped give birth to and save people's lives, and it was hard growing up in his shoes. But I think the other thing is that when our kids were younger, we tried to. Our generation is younger. I'm younger at 64 than my dad was at 64.
Gotcha.
It was so we try to be more active. But yeah, the biggest thing was just, and it's funny because our kids to this day, like my son will call, and every call is love you, and that's nice to know. And Emily too is the same way. I see it with her. I actually think the hardest thing for me is going to be is how we raised our kids and how our daughter raises her and her husband raised their kid. Because we didn't have cell phones and computers with cameras and we had cartoons on TV. That was it.
Right. Yeah. That was like the Saturday mornings and after schools were the only babysitting time, really.
Right. And my daughter actually said something before Autumn was born that she said there's going to be no iPads or anything until she's at least 4 or 5 years old. Because she wants her to, she goes, don't buy her any videos. She said, buy her books. And so we read books to her. And it's been proven over the years that the kids that are read books to somehow, for whatever reason, tend to adjust better.
I've heard that we try to do that with, especially our older son, because the twins they don't focus well very well yet. But our older son, we try to read to him as much as possible. In fact, before I came up here to do the show tonight, we did, the bedtime story.
Yeah, I think, listen, it's a different time now. My daughter has she's an educational specialist, and she told me that kids, that she thinks that no kid should have a smartphone. They can have a phone because it's, say they can call mom or dad or whatever.
For safety purposes, yeah, of course.
But they shouldn't have a phone that you can download something until they're 18. Because she said, and she's had it happen, that parents will come in for conferences and they'll say, oh, we monitor our kids' phones, we do this. And Emily will take their phone and there's a naked picture of the girl's boyfriend. It was hidden under some folder that, they because these kids are growing up with this. They're better than we are at it.
Right. So it's the same as when, you would grow up if you were, I knew you said you were a good kid, but like sneaking out to go to a party, that kind of thing. It's the new sneaky. Yeah,
it's the new sneaky. And, and unfortunately, our Playboy is now the internet, and it is way more graphic. And
there's stuff that I'm embarrassed, even as an adult, to know that is out there.
Well, it was funny. And boys are going to be boys, just like yours are going to. And I walked into his room, and he was on his computer, and I saw what it was. And I'm sure some of his friends told him, hey, go to this website. Well, what they didn't tell him was, you can't just click it off. These programs are built. And I took that as a real teaching moment. I said, look, son, I'm not going to tell you that I don't want you, you're not in trouble. You're not grounded. I understand this. You're curious. And I said, but what I want you to understand is that's not what women do. I didn't want him to grow up thinking that's what normal is. That I said, that's a whole nother thing that we'll talk about at another time. But, you know, that's disrespectful for women, even though there's women who that they choose to do that.
Right.
I don't want him thinking, you know, that's what his wife's going to be doing, you know. And so I think that's another thing is and I tried to do this, and Gail was really good at it. But when they do something that's wrong, to use that moment as a teaching moment, as opposed to just, you're grounded. You know, you may ground them, but tell them why. This is why you can't do this. And this is what, you know, and I think if parents will use those situations as a teaching moment, then you won't have as much trouble later. You know, and when I say a teaching moment, that means you are under control. You're not yelling. You're just like, okay, dude, let's talk about this. You know, and I have a friend, his whole thing was he used to let his kids set the punishment. He goes, what do you think you're going to be punished? What do you think you should have to do?
Oh, that's interesting.
And so they, you know, the kids, obviously if the kid said, I think you ought to let me go get off, you go, no, something's got to happen. And you're going to be the one to decide. Another one, I thought this was genius. Here's the other problem you run into. You want your kids to have a better life than you did, but it's another fine line you walk about spoiling them.
Right.
So like I have a guy I know that his thing was, he told his kid, he said, you get it. You know, the kid was like 16 and he wanted something. He said, I'll tell you what, he said, you get a job. And for every $1 you save, I'll match it.
Oh, that's interesting.
So the kid had an incentive. You know, it's like if the kid saved $100,000, he's getting another $100,000. You know, that's as opposed to, you know, just giving them money.
Right. That's interesting. Now, what was other than straightforward talking to them, what was your style of parenting?
We never hit our kids. We never spanked them. I take that there was one time I called it a get his attention moment. And it wasn't even a spanking. It was just a little swat to settle him down. But we never had to. And I think that if you set the groundwork early, then you don't run into as many problems. The other thing is you want your kids to be able to. Here's the other thing I tell them. If you want to know what's going on in your kids' lives, drive carpool. Because kids somehow think you can't hear what they're talking about. And you know, like there was stuff that would come up and, you gotta deal with it. But like and this is the other thing is you can't be afraid to call their bluff.
Right.
Like one time I remember Travis said, hey, I'm going to spend the night at Joe's house. And I said, is Joe's mom cool with that? He goes, oh yeah. So I said, well, let me just call her. So I called Joe's mom. I said, you know, you're having a sleepover? She goes, no, I did not. I said, well, thank you very much. And, you know, there was a moment that I said, buddy, lying is the worst. That's the hardest thing because when they start lying, you've got to nip it in the bud early because it'll just get worse and worse. And especially if they know they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And so lying in our house was about as bad a thing as you could do other than hitting your mom.
Right.
But if you lied to us, but then again, that's where I went back to my parents. And it sounds cliche, but it's like, I remember saying, I'm just hurt. I'm disappointed and hurt that you just felt like you don't have enough respect for me that you would want to lie to me first. And that just
gets them in the feels.
Oh, they don't even know how to deal that.
I was always big on the if my mom said I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. As soon as I heard that
yeah. Or the other thing, some people think this is really cruel, but lie to them. Hey, I'm gonna take you to the store and buy some candy and get them all excited about it. And they go, when they say, where are we going? I go, I didn't say we were going. I lied to you. Didn't feel good, does it?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I might have to work that into my routine now, because our son is kind of in that little white fib phase where, like,
yeah, they're gonna do it. They think that, listen, I don't care how far back in the generations you go. I thought I was smarter than my dad. My dad thought he was smarter than his dad. Your kids are going to think they're smarter than you, and they don't realize that everything they're going to do, you've already done. But they cannot grasp that concept until it happens.
No, our 5-year-old has no concept. He thinks I'm 8 years old, and so like, he has no concept of time outside of, like, his immediate reality.
Right.
So how was the way you parented versus your wife's style different? Like, did she do things differently, or pretty much the same?
You know what? Gail was really good about keeping a schedule. She was really good about taking them out to do stuff, whether it was museums or whatever it was. You know, she was, for early on, we were both working, so it was difficult. But it's interesting now that the kids will call Gail before they'll call me.
Really?
Yeah, because she was the parent. She
was there all the time. Right. Exactly.
So they not like they ignore me, but if they have an issue or a problem, they're more likely to call her first.
You go to your wife. So how do you feel, the biggest difference, what do you think the biggest difference is between, the father's role versus the mother's role?
That's a great question. I think we've grown out of we're no longer in the, well, dad works and mom stays, that doesn't fly anymore.
No, definitely not.
I think, but I'm going to go back to that, what I said earlier, that there doesn't need to be two different roles. You both have the same role, and your role is to raise those kids the best you can. And you want to raise a good human being that's not a leech on society, pays their bills, and so I kind of think that then I think this is a really good thing, that we've evolved as parents to where it is a dual parenting. That, it used to be, like the dads, they didn't go into the delivery room. They're outside smoking cigars and I think that dad involvement has really come on in a good way. And it's when you combine it with the mother and the father, then you've got the best situation for a kid, that they see mom and dad are in agreement, and, that they both, because these days, as you and I both know, a lot of couples, both of them have to work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can't make it any other way.
Life has gotten to be too expensive. And I tell you the other thing, and, and this is just my personal belief, but when the kids were young, we really tried to keep a spiritual basis for them. We went to church and Sunday school and stuff. And I think, and then what we did was, as they got older, then we let them make their decision about it. We didn't force them. But I do think that, my kids know that I'm very spiritual, and I think they appreciate that I'm not a whack job, but it's
everything works as long as as long as it's handled smoothly.
I tell you another thing that I really firmly believe in, and I've done it. Don't be afraid to tell your kids you were wrong.
I am wrong so often that they have just kind of accepted it this point.
Well, like, I remember one time, our rule was, if you went somewhere, if you changed locations, then you had to call us to say, we're going from Taco Bell to Janie's house. And we explained to them, that's just so that we have if something goes wrong, we know kind of where to look for you. Mm-hmm. At the time we lived in LA, like if there was an earthquake,
right,
I want to know where I can go find my kids. And Emily, who was always, we never had any issues with her. I mean, just the ones that we had were so minuscule, they weren't even worth bringing up. But
right,
She was with some friends at Taco Bell, and they walked over to another friend's house. Well, the next day she had been invited by a friend of hers to go to Leonardo DiCaprio's house. He wasn't there. It was just the girls, his assistant and her daughter and Emily were friends. It was some kind of weird thing like that. But Emily was very excited about it. Well, I forget how we found out. We went by Taco Bell to pick up Emily, and she wasn't there.
Oh.
And they had walked over to her friend's house, and I said, "You can't go to Leonardo DiCaprio's house tomorrow. That's your punishment." And I was wrong. I was wrong for that. It was too harsh a punishment for a very small crime. And I told her that. After years later, I said, "I'm sorry. I was wrong." Because kids have to know that you're not perfect. You're just hanging on, man. You're just doing the best you can. I always compare parenting. There used to be a poster a long time ago of a kitten hanging from a branch, and it said, "Hang in there, baby." And that's all a parent does, is just hang on for dear life and pray to God that you're doing the right things and you're making the right choices. Because like I said earlier, there's no manual. And so when you do screw up and you know they know it, don't be afraid to say, "You know what, Daddy was wrong here. I'm sorry." Because it makes you human. It gives you that human quality that a lot of times they don't see in parents. They just see parents as disciplinarians.
Right. And now parents are so frequently, face down in a phone or a tablet. Like a lot of that stuff there's a disconnect.
Yeah. That's another thing that, thank goodness we didn't have to deal with this. But had we were going to we talked about that at dinner table, there's no phones, there's no iPads. When we go out to dinner, there's no iPads, because I know people are using it as a babysitting service now. And it's like we have a friend who has a 4-year-old who can name you every state capital, but he has no social skills whatsoever because he's on his iPad. And they're using the guise of it's educational.
Gotcha.
Well, at what point do we cross that path that we've come from educational to, well, it's keeping him quiet?
Yeah, it's a rocky slope. And I've been
to deal with it. So, I was so happy.
I've been guilty of it, particularly the summer when regulations for COVID opened up here a little bit. Outdoor dining happened, so we tried to reintegrate our cave children back into society, and they lost a whole lot of just social skills in those months. and I literally thought I was back in a college frat house because of just craziness. Yeah. And so I was like, "Honey, I know we don't normally do this, but I need to put a screen in front of them for Mickey Mouse Clubhouse for just a little bit till we get reins here." And so I am a little guilty of that, but
that's listen, there's times in parenthood you got to do what you got to do just to maintain your sanity. And I'm just grateful that when our kids were young that they didn't have these things yet.
Now, do you think that parents, raising kids today are, do you feel like they're playing a completely different ball game than when you raised yours?
Oh yeah, and just like it was a different ball game from when my dad raised us. Listen, I thank God there was no cell phones when I was in college. We wouldn't be talking right now. It would be, but yeah, I do think that it's different, and that's why I've been wanting to say you can't raise your. I always think it's funny that people say you're end up just like your parents. Well, my parents weren't that bad, so that's not a slam to me. But the world is different in each generation. Like now these kids have got every electronic. It's like all their entertainment is right here, as opposed to you, or you're young, way younger than me, but as opposed to me going and playing Army in the sandlot with my buddies or playing pickup football game in the schoolyard. That was what we did, or we would go on our bicycles and ride forever. Nowadays, that would be my advice. It's like I get it that the electronic world is here, but don't be afraid to let your kids let them go get dirty. Let them play in the mud. Let them, we're raising all these kids that are going to have no immune system. It's like, I drank water out of a garden hose. It's like,
right. Yeah. And that was so commonplace.
Yeah. We used to ride our bikes behind the mosquito fogger that was just billowing out DDT. And we thought it was cool because we were riding our bikes through the clouds, not realizing we were sucking down poison, but we didn't, So I think, I think the answer, the short answer to this is you can hybrid. It doesn't have to be black or white. You can, if your kids can have some screen time. Maybe, that was another thing my friend did. He said, he asked his kids, how long do you think you should be allowed to be on the computer? And, he said it was amazing. They go, I don't know, maybe an hour. He goes, okay, an hour a day. And that way, when they start grabbing, he goes, you picked it. I didn't pick it. You picked it.
That's
so I understand in this day and age of technology, that you're going to have to deal with that. But also take them outside, let them run, let them fall, let them skin their knees, let them, if they drop their gum on the ground, we had the 3-second rule. You pick it up, washed it off, and ate it again. I'm sitting here talking to you.
Yeah, exactly. And you survived this far.
Yeah. And I'm not saying to everyone out there that if your kid drops his ice cream on the ground, go ahead and buy him another one. Don't make him eat that one. Don't let him eat that one. That's kind of disgusting. But yeah, and that's what you do. You just like I said, it's your ball game,
So now you've become a grandparent. What was that like for you? As soon as I said grandparent, your face lit right up. So what was that like hearing you were going to be? I saw a post. Your papa.
Yeah, I'm Papa.
Okay.
Papa and Gigi. I'll tell you, bud. My daughter. We had come to Denver to visit them, and we had known that they had been trying, and she came upstairs to our hotel room and she goes, hey, I found this at this store today. I thought you guys might like it. And it was a little tiny music box. And when we opened it, there was this little tiny sonogram picture of the baby. And I'm going to tell you something. I bawled like a baby. And when you walk in to the delivery room and you see your baby holding her baby. That was another one that got me because I kind of realized that life had come full circle. And now, my God, Gail and I went to Sam's Club today to get something, and we ended up buying a book and a toy and some shoes. The great thing about grandparenting, you get all the perks and none of the problems. It's like
so you just pass them off at the end of the night.
When they start getting gripey, you go, oh, I guess mama wants it.
Now, so what is your, how do you handle your granddaughter versus, how you handled your own kids? Because you're still pretty young, right?
Well, I tell you, because I have to remember it's not my kid. That's a huge thing for grandparents. Because like, I'm like the guy, like I bought the Sam's Club size box of animal crackers, Teddy Grahams, and and Autumn loves them. But I have to respect Emily's wishes when she goes, just give her one. So I
on animal cracker.
Well, sometimes we sneak in too. Yeah. But it's Gail and I love being grandparents. We love it. But we also understand that it's not our kid. And we have to kind of abide by her rules, within a certain parameters. That's a grandparent's job is to kind of spoil them.
Right. Now, has Emily come to you at all since Autumn's birth and been like, what do I do here? Has she come to you guys for advice?
Not to me. She might have to Gail, but Emily's pretty on the ball. I mean, Emily's the research queen. I mean, if she wants to know something, she will get on the internet and she'll search and find. And, I'm really proud of how Emily has just kind of slid into motherhood. She's a really good mom. She has that little girl on a schedule. That little girl knows the schedule. And they, like, I think she slept through the night fairly early, just because, there was some consistency there. And, but just to watch her grow already, she's walking now. And the other day we were over there and Gail just, I got tickled because, Autumn's, when mama's in the room, it's all about mama. Well, we were over at their house and Autumn walked up to Gail and did the whole little raise her arms, like pick me up. Man, Gail didn't need she had jet shoes on. She was floating around. And the hard thing is right now, and actually I learned this from a friend of mine by watching him. What I do with Autumn is I take the moments that I get with her. That when she's just, when she's focused on me, that's my moment. And, but what's funny is I had a friend whose daughter had a little girl and he wanted her so badly to want him all the time. And she picked up on that. And like, he'd say, hey, come see grandpa. And she'd go, nope, and walk off. And it just broke his heart. But it's because she learned that, hey, I know he'll always be there.
Right. Yeah.
So what I try to do is I'm saying I don't ignore Autumn, but I take my moments and then I'll sit there and watch some TV or go read a book or something. And then, when the time comes in, we'll have our time together.
Yeah. So looking back, what do you wish you knew back when you first started parenting, that you know now?
Not a thing. And I say that because even in the hard times, I just loved being a parent and loved knowing that Gail and I were doing it on our own, that we figured this out together. And I think, I'm one of those people that I never really say, oh, what if this had happened? What if I'd have done this? What if I'd have not been on the road? It all worked out the way it's supposed to work out. Maybe if I'd have been home all the time, I wouldn't have been the dad I am now. It would, it's, so I'm not one who really likes to prognosticate on what it could have been. Because I got to tell you something, the good Lord has blessed us so much that I every night I say, I don't know what I did right in my life to deserve this, but thank you.
Well, I mean, you've brought a lot of joy to a lot of people, and I think that if anything, that we've learned in the past couple of years is that there's a whole lot of darkness and ugly in this world. And, watching your comedy specials, and I've watched them for, as long as I can remember, and like, your material and your connection with your audience always brings a smile to my face. It touches something inside you. You talk about the things that people talk about. You're down to earth, and talking to you tonight, like we before the show, we went right, like we just started chatting. Like we're very conversational, and I think that something you should know about yourself is that you are a real joy to this world, and you're a real light in this world. And I really do appreciate everything that you bring to it.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet of you to say that. It's interesting. I didn't know really what my purpose on this planet was for a long time. And I finally realized that the reason I'm here and the reason that I am not gone, because I should be dead 3 times over, but I feel like the good Lord has told me that my job is to try to make people smile, and whether it's through comedy or whether it's through being a parent or whatever. And you said earlier there's a lot of dark, and there is a lot of dark, but I think sometimes what we forget is there's an awful lot of good out there still. There's still those people that are just good, solid people. And I'm blessed to know that a lot of those people are fans of mine. But I think that it's just a weird time we're going through right now. And, and that's another thing, with your little ones there, that, you kind of have to explain to them why we can't do this right now, but we will do it. We're all going to come out. And I hope that when this whole thing is better, I hope we all come out of this with better people, and that maybe we can get back to respecting each other and taking care of each other and get back to laughing.
Absolutely. Well, Bill, thank you so much for
this has been a hoot. I'll tell you how good it's been. I never drank one drink of my beer. I was so busy talking.
I know, me either. So, you know, so you got a show coming up. You're about to venture back out, and tell everybody where they can find
It's in Surprise, Arizona, at the Performing Arts Center. It looks like the road's going to slowly start coming back. So check the website, and I'll also be posting on social media, what dates are coming up. And, I feel bad that at a time when we needed comedy the worst, we couldn't give it to them. And so now hopefully it's all coming back up, and just having a great time. And if you want to have some fun, I do a thing on Facebook every Sunday morning called Sunday Mornings with Bill. And it's just a little inspirational 10-minute talk. And check me out on Instagram, or as my kids call it, Insta.
Yeah.
And the what's the other one? It's Instagram and Facebook. Yeah. And I'll keep you abreast of what's going on.
And come back anytime you have anything going on. By all means, come back. Check it out.
I'll do this show. And listen, please give my love to your family, and take care of yourself. Stay well, and you'll get through the twos.
Thank you. You take care, buddy.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.